This is the Church Anywhere podcast, where we talk about hard topics beyond the four walls of the church.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Church Anywhere podcast. This is our first episode. It's pretty cool. We're going to be talking about every month different things that are on our hearts or things that are very relevant in the culture that we think can outfit you to be better followers of Christ and hopefully spark conversations. So what this is going to be is more of a dialogue. It's not really us teaching and preaching. It's more of just the four of us having a conversation. My name's Tyler.
I'm Ed.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Marianne.
Maybe you guys know us, but if you're new to this channel, then hello. Here's what we're going to do today. We are going to talk about a topic that has been challenging people basically since Jesus resurrected. We're going to look at what is the relationship between faith and reason. And if you're like me, you've heard people in both sides of that camp that are very staunchly in both sides. So you can only have faith, you can only have reason, and you have some people that are in the middle. I feel like I've never heard a great conversation about this, and I think it would have been very helpful for me, especially as a new believer, to have this conversation. Let me read a couple quotes to get us started here. And this is Mark Twain. He said, "Faith is believing what you know ain't true." There's an author that's an atheist named Sam Harris. He's written a ton of books. He defined faith as the license that religious people give themselves to keep believing when reasoning fails. Richard Dawkins, probably the most famous atheist, at least in our generation, he claims that faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is belief in spite of, even perhaps because of, the lack of evidence. So as believers, we hinge a lot of our religion on this concept of faith. But to the outside world, faith doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think maybe let's start here. What is faith?
Whenever I think about what faith is, it's never to me been completely opposed to logical thinking. It's always been something that you're supposed to be able to defend in some way. Maybe that's how I was raised, and probably a little bit different than some people, where I think even on the side of Christians, we kind of dig ourselves into our own hole of, no, faith is completely and entirely opposed to reason. And I think that's how some people just grew up, where it's like, no, don't listen to the people that are researching things and doing all that kind of stuff, doing science and things like that. That is over there, and faith is over here. And if you believe that Jesus is who he said he was, then you don't believe any of the things that people are saying and researching and stuff like that.
So why do you think that we get to that point where we almost encourage people, hey, don't have any type of reasoning, or don't look into this any further than faith?
I think part of it might be in our strong stance, especially as Protestants, on statements like by faith alone, because we don't necessarily take that in the context of you're saved by faith alone. We just think faith alone, faith is the only thing that you can possibly have. And if you don't, faith is the only thing. So in a world where you have people that are opposed to Christianity saying that reason and faith are completely separate, statements like faith alone, without their context of being talking about this is how we are saved, I think we're just like, okay, fine, I'll dig myself in this hole because by faith alone. So all of that stuff just isn't real. It's not relevant to me or anything like that.
So what was your question again?
How do we get to the point of in a society where we've pitted Christians versus people that like to be rational? There's the opposite ends of that spectrum, and obviously some people live within the middle of that. But
Well, I would just say that I think society has been moving this direction for a long time. Maybe it started there and I just wasn't aware of it, but we are a culture of extremes. You can either believe this or this.
And if you believe that, then you can't believe that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You can't combine the two. It's just not possible. It's oil and water in a lot of people's minds. I don't agree with that, but I think that's where we are.
So then that leads to this question, and I'll ask Mary Ann this, because we've had this conversation a little bit before. Can you have both faith and reasoning together? Can they coincide well within a person?
I think they do coincide. I think there's an element of faith in anything that we do. You can tell somebody, I'm going to leave my house at this time and arrive there like however long it takes, like an hour. And so I'm saying that my reasoning says it takes an hour to get there. I have this car, I'm going to get there. But in reality, it takes a little bit of faith to get there because there could be an accident, there could be traffic. And so anything we think that we're sure of, I don't know if anything, because then we're speaking in extremes again. Sorry. But there is an element of faith. You can say, it's going to take me an hour to get here. I have a car. I know how to get there. But there's some faith in that statement as well that, yes, I'm going to arrive at this location at this time.
I think that leads to back to the first question, which was, what is faith? So I think there's people that will take it to the extreme that faith is like believing in something regardless of if you know if it's possible or not. But then there's like more of a logical version of faith where it's not necessarily because you've seen the evidence, but because there's reasoning behind the evidence to believe in something, you have faith in it. And that's where I think Christianity falls into. None of us have actually seen Jesus in person, except for the early believers. But we've recognized the evidence that has led to generation after generation following Christ. So then therefore we put our faith in him. So it's not like blind following. There is evidence to that. The problem lies whenever there's like new evidence that comes out of things that happen in the world, and we say, no, that can't be possible because this is what I believe, and I have to have only faith in this area. How do we, as a culture of Christians, when new things are discovered, when science proves this, and this, like, how do we not just immediately say, well, they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong, they're right? How do we live in the balance?
I think that I would go the route of, well, first we have to understand, which some people aren't on board with this, but truth is entirely subjective. When we're talking about absolute truth, it exists. It's a real thing. There's a lot of people out there that are kind of, my truth, your truth, these are different things. There is absolute truth, and we kind of have to start there. And if we can't start there, there's not even a conversation to be had. But knowing there is absolute truth, and then being a Christian, believing that God is the source of absolute truth, everything that is absolutely true comes from God, and he created it. We shouldn't be afraid of new things. What might appear to be in direct contradiction with what we believe may be right in line with the way that God operates. And some of the reason that we have so much pushback might not even be because the way we feel is rooted directly in Scripture, but maybe the way we were taught to view Scripture in a certain way, or just the way that we were taught to view the world in a certain way.
And like not being able to at least wrestle with new things or rational things really puts God in a box.
Yeah.
It says that, like, I've read these specific scriptures, so therefore God is only this, period. Whenever, like, we have no grasp of the vastness of God and his wisdom and his understanding compared to ours.
We were talking about faith, and I think we're all on this faith journey, and we come to faith or belief in God in different ways for different reasons. And then we start having these conversations about reason and what you believe, somebody may be in a different part of their journey. You think somebody, if they're presented with the gospel and they have nothing else to go on other than somebody just presented this eternity with God or hell, well, what's the risk there? Well, I'm going to err on the side of eternity, like with God versus hell, but I don't stay there. Then as I walk out my faith journey, then I have evidence, then I read the Bible. I'm these first eyewitness accounts of who Jesus was and what he did, and lives changed, people who are farther along in their faith journey than me. Then I see those evidence. Then my faith is based on more than just a get out of hell free card.
Yeah. I think we all probably start there, but it's almost like you're collecting evidence throughout your life, which grows your faith. But if you err on the side of only reasoning, then you're less apt to be collecting evidence and more apt to be trying to push back against the evidence that's in front of you.
But I'm not sure that anybody only does reasoning. I think faith fits in there maybe not the kind of faith that they would,
Not the saving faith.
not the saving faith, but there's still an element of faith, I think, in everyone. My example that I would want to use is every day we do things by faith, not saving faith, but when I sat down on this couch, I had faith that it was going to hold me. I had faith that the stairs would.
That was a bold move.
It was really tough. I struggled at the bottom of the stairs trying to decide if I should come up or not. But we all do that. So I think it is based on some of where we start from. So I know I was raised in a different generation than you guys were, but my family was a Christian family. I never questioned God or Jesus or anything while I was growing up. I almost built that into who I am as solid fact. So I've never struggled with this faith piece because of that. But I know that's not the way it is now. Not that many people have been raised in that kind of a family where you don't start there. I think that has a big part of this discussion and where it goes.
I think you're right. I can think back in times when I was younger. I would have definitely erred on the more reason side of things when I was a kid. I was the kid that questioned everything. And I remember times specifically when my parents or grandparents would just say, well, you just have to have faith if I would question anything. So there's a level that you can take that to where it's not helpful. Because faith, like I said earlier, isn't just blindly believing something. So as a kid, like your experience was, I'll just follow that. Yeah. My experience was, I'll rebel against this because no one can give me any answers to my questions.
Yeah. So I think I built on things. There were little things that happened. I thought, okay, I can take that next step. And that's how it went for me.
Right. Whereas I was, oh, you can't answer that? Well, then I'll just go way over here then.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I experienced that saving faith that completely changed it. Because like the difference between saving faith versus just like having faith in that that chair is not going to fall over is that saving faith requires us to humble ourselves and realize that like there's nothing that we can do, that we have to have faith that God will provide salvation. So it's up to him and nothing that we can do. But then in humbling myself to accept that saving faith, I started having more faith in other things I couldn't experience. Does that make sense? So that humility piece goes a long way in collecting the evidence to have faith. At least for me, it did. So let's take it to a more controversial topic. So 2020, you guys remember that? It was an interesting time. There was a popular phrase that really started happening then, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes, I do.
Because I've seen T-shirts and bumper stickers and things like that. But it was the phrase faith over fear.
You have a hat that says it. Absolutely. Okay.
I have heard so many people talk about that. Let's talk about what is that? What is that? Like, can your faith be greater than your fear? And also, can you have both a healthy fear and faith that God will pull you through?
We can get to that, but I remember the first time I heard that phrase in 2020. There was an event coming up, or we're getting ready to plan an event, and this person that was in the room getting ready to plan it, we were talking about, okay, what should we do? Should we put on masks? Should we do whatever? And this person said, we don't need to do any of that because we have faith over fear.
And five COVID times later for me.
I looked at the person and thought, what? What does that have to do with what we were just talking about? Because I really hadn't experienced that phrase and the depth of it.
It became a rallying cry for, I don't want this to be a political podcast, but it became a rallying cry for very far-right conservative Christians in America. That became, I think, less about salvation faith and a lot more about being anti-controlled by the government. So we kind of like lumped those two things together of like, my faith will allow me to not listen to this. And I'm not sure where I stand on any of this. I'm just curious, like, can we can we have a concern about a global pandemic, but also have faith that God is who he says he is at the same time?
Yeah, it's interesting because the phrase itself alone, it's like we can read scripture and be like, there's reason for me to have faith, and that caused me not to be so anxious about everything that's going on in the world. But the problem is, whenever a phrase like that, in the way that we live it out and actually act upon it, it's pretty anti-loving the people around us, was often the case. So even if a phrase on its own could stand with scripture and have good intentions as far as that goes, or makes sense. Yeah, it's like it can make sense with scripture, but if in actually living that out, you don't love your neighbor, that becomes a problem.
I don't think the faith over fear phrase was ever supposed to be about loving your neighbor or not loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
It's true. Your faith can overcome fear, but somehow we've taken that truth and turned it into something that implies something completely.
Well, and many people took that statement as far as saying things like, well, COVID's not real. I have faith that God would not do this to our country specifically. And so then it went not just faith and reason. We just threw reason completely out the window on that one, which goes back to loving your neighbor. We had millions of people dying.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what side of believing in the effectiveness of COVID or not, there's things that we can do that we don't necessarily want to do that is showing the people around us that we care about them. And I think that was kind of just completely missed when these kind of phrases are kind of rallied behind and thrown up like that.
I'm curious. You were in Bible college.
Yeah.
When this happened. It changed your entire collegiate life.
Yeah.
How did a Bible college handle the faith over fear idea?
You didn't hear that thrown around a whole lot. You really didn't hear it thrown around a whole lot. But I mean, we were very strict on our rules. I only got 2 regular semesters of college that never had any masks or anything like that involved.
Out of 8?
Out of 7. Out of 7. So I had, 5 semesters that at least at some point during that semester we had COVID and masks and everything like that. And yeah, it was really annoying to not be able to do all the things of college life. But me and my friend group just kind of stuck to each other and we're like, it's not fun, but we're going to kind of silo ourselves a little bit for the sake of everyone else here, because whenever it was already bad enough to try to learn in this kind of hybrid sense, and the more that we saw our peers around us just kind of breaking the rules, the more our classes became empty, even though we were spread out. It's just like you're impeding other people's ability to learn by not following rules.
Do you think that your faith grew as you clung to this community of people that you had that were walking beside you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So even in a bad, even in like a bad situation,
sure. Yeah.
Your faith grew as you basically collected evidence of it together. Like I think there's a huge element of community.
Yeah.
Grow that faith and still respect that like reasoning exists.
Yes. Yeah.
You're gonna say something.
Well, I think this idea of faith over fear, it kind of like what we're talking about here. It's like you have one or the other, just like we're talking about. Do you have faith or reason? So, but they exist together. We have fear of God. Faith doesn't mean that you won't have fear. Sometimes we act anyway, even if we are afraid. So I think it's just one of those things where we want it to be all one way or the other way because that's clean and neat, but it's messy in the middle where there's tension with faith over fear and with faith and reasoning like we're talking about here.
That's such a good way of putting it. It's messy. Like we love to have these little quips and these little statements that we cling to that don't like accurately represent the human experience, because the human experience is very complex. It's not linear, and the people are all over the place, and we experience all these different things. I remember specifically hearing people say faith over fear until someone that they love died of COVID, or someone that they love got COVID, and then they switched. But to the outside world, if we cling to these like little one-liners but then switch on them, like that's the reason you have atheists writing things like, well, faith is just believing things when you know it's not true. So we have to be careful not to like hang our hats on these little cute one-liners and really like think through, why do we have faith?
Yeah. It's what we talked about at the beginning of the year, where a lot of people's faith are standing really strongly on kind of the outer rings of faith, things that are less essential to what we absolutely have to believe. And then we set it up as kind of, if you don't believe this, then you're completely against me. And when reason comes into the picture, that kind of shakes up a little bit of these outer rings. Since we're standing on them, a lot of people fall, and they're like, this is what's going on. This doesn't make any sense to me.
It's if we take it to the Bible, I think of in Matthew, Jesus talking to these Pharisees, and they're trying to trip him up, and he says, essentially, like, the sun is going to be red towards the end of the day, right? They're like, yeah. The sun's going to rise tomorrow morning, right? They're like, yeah. So you use reasoning right there, like anybody can recognize this. And then he says, you're looking for all these signs, but you're not going to find them because you're an adulterous generation. And the only sign is going to be like the one of Jonah. And they didn't understand that was referencing that he was going to raise from the dead. Yeah. But Jesus took them through a rational pattern of thinking to show that, like, hey, you can understand reasoning. Yeah. However, because you are adulterous within your actual faith in what's going to happen, what God said, like you're wanting something besides the Messiah that was presented before you, you're never going to pick up on this sign. But he uses both faith and reasoning. He's saying there's evidence that is to be had. You're just not picking it up yet. So therefore, you're not growing your faith. Many of us do that, I think. Anybody else got anything else?
So there was a guy who was a principal of a Christian school that I remember talking with, and he used a phrase one time, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. And he just said, all truth is God's truth. And as a school principal, what he was trying to tell me and others is that, yes, we need to spend time in mathematics and science and looking at all of these things, because if it's true, it came from God. There's nothing out there that didn't come from God. So we need to look at and accept all of that. That would include science. That would include reasoning. That would include a lot of different things. I don't feel like the two have to be at the extremes, like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, if you have that mindset, that almost it gives you the freedom to praise God for advancements in society, rather than to say like, oh, society is just moving away from God.
Medicines, prescription drugs, surgeries, things like that. Did that just come from man? Did God have something to do with that? I want to believe that God had something to do with that in the discovery phase of that he gave people minds to think things through and discover things. I don't see them as competing against each other.
I think many of these things, like hospitals, the reason they're named after certain saints is because they have their roots in Christian people faithfully reasoning ways to help people around them. Same thing with science. Until, honestly, very recently in the span of history, science has been a very Christian thing to do, to discover the world around you. And a point I was making on the way over here was actually that a lot of the faith that the scripture which we take our faith in came about in our language because someone reasoned in a way that was outside of the Bible by studying language to get us a Bible that we can read in our own language.
Well, you take that a step further, then through the scientific method, Gutenberg was able to create a printing press machine that allows us to have copies of the Bible, and then somebody invented a computer that allows us to have Bibles on our phone. So continue that process. Like the science has supported even allowing us to read God's word.
Yeah. I think that reason is a gift from God also, because he wants us to experience him. He wants us to know. He wants to reveal himself to us. And so we grow in our understanding of him through our experiences, through the evidence that we collect around us. And that's how we get to know him. So I think he's given us reason as a gift so that we can get to know him.
We are made in his image, and the closest thing that he created to be like him, and to assume that we should throw reason out the window or throw any type of knowledge out the window is to assume that God also is not a reasonable God.
Yeah.
and his knowledge far surpasses our knowledge. His wisdom far surpasses anything we can experience. So we got to wrap this up soon, but any final thoughts here?
So I have a question. What do we do when faith and reason collide? When there are things that science tells us that seem to disagree with faith? How do we work through those?
The way that I approach that is it really comes down to how big we see God as, how big you view God to be. Because with different theories on things that happen, taking the Bible literally in some places but not in others, it comes down to, do you believe that God is big enough to accommodate both of these theories, either of these theories? There's some that I agree with and some that I don't, but even if I'm wrong, I believe God's big enough to do it that way, even if I believe it happened this way. It doesn't shake me because I believe God's way bigger than I can fully understand. And if he chooses to do something in a way that I don't think happened, I think he has the power to do that, and the ability to do so. But yeah, that's often, I think, on those outer issues that we stand on, that sort of thing happens.
I feel like it goes back to that faith over fear thing and not using these like one-liner quips. We have, as a society, become like polar extremes, but based on things that don't matter for the most part. So you keep saying these outer issues, but like if there's like this target and there's multiple rungs and the essentials are in the middle, the things that we end up polarizing ourselves on tend to be the things on the very outer rung that like don't impact the grand story of the gospel like at all. From creation to eternity, future, like none of that is impacted by the things we tend to fight over. And those tend to be the things that faith and reason collide most of the time against. And so then we put ourselves in camps that are, I'm all faith, I'm all reason, and then the grand scheme, it really doesn't even matter. All right, so hopefully there was some stuff that sparked some discussion maybe between the people that have watched this, and we would love to hear feedback. So if you're watching or listening to this wherever you listen to podcasts, we would love to hear your feedback. And Matthew has volunteered to read some of your comments on the next podcast. So good or bad, directed at Matthew, not directed at Matthew. We're going to try to read some of them and respond to them. We want this to be kind of an open dialogue. We're going to do this once a month and hit on topics that we won't be preaching on, but that are very relevant in our society. And we're going to hit on some pretty challenging things. So I hope that you'll come along for the ride. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you're notified whenever we do a new video. And if you have suggestions on topics that you would like for us to discuss, then feel free to send those as well. Thanks, guys.